Mara felt the change in the air before she even turned toward the door. There was a subtle tension, a shift in the currents that threaded invisibly through the room, like the faint quiver of a pond disturbed by a pebble thrown far upstream. Rhett had been sitting quietly, his attention on the small energy matrix laid out on the table in front of him. His fingers traced invisible lines above the surface, sensing the patterns that could not be seen with ordinary sight. Solara sat across from him, her gaze distant, not unfocused, but tuned to the overlapping fields of thought and intention that moved through the space. Kalen moved around the perimeter, slow and deliberate, his awareness scanning the room, feeling the vibrations of energy ripple through walls, furniture, and air alike. Mara's pulse quickened with recognition. She had learned long ago to read the subtle distortions that signaled the approach of someone capable of interfacing with the hidden currents. The newcomer carried fragments of the grid within him, strange patterns encoded into his nervous system that allowed him to interact with the invisible lattice without losing cohesion. She could feel it, a resonance that hummed at the edges of perception, pressing softly against her awareness, inviting her to link with it. The door creaked, a faint sound that seemed louder than it should, and he stepped into the room. Mara did not flinch. She had encountered many with similar abilities, but very few could navigate the network of energy and consciousness without leaving chaos in their wake. He was steady, precise, and the air seemed to vibrate in acknowledgement of his presence. Rhett's hands moved more actively over the energy matrix, amplifying and guiding the flows to accommodate the new element. Solara's eyes flickered as she mapped the interaction, linking her own cognition to the currents carried by the newcomer. Kalen adjusted the room's network, subtly directing energy patterns to align with the rhythms he sensed in the newcomer's movements. Mara extended her awareness, threading her perception into the weave of the room. She felt the subtle push and pull of energy as it aligned with the other Psycorp's members, recognizing the newcomer's unique signature. He moved cautiously, aware that he was not alone, and yet he carried a quiet confidence, a mastery of the currents that Mara had seldom encountered. The room itself seemed to respond, a complex lattice of mental and energetic signals harmonizing as the group tuned to one another. Rhett's voice broke the silence, low and controlled. "He is stable. Let him interface." Solara nodded, her mental focus intensifying as she reached out, tracing the patterns of thought and intention that emanated from him. Kalen shifted slightly, manipulating the energy fields in subtle, precise ways to accommodate the flow he was introducing. Mara felt the weave of currents fold and adjust, the room itself becoming a nexus where human cognition and hidden patterns intersected. The newcomer began to engage with the network, small movements at first, subtle pulses that Mara could feel through her awareness. Each pulse carried information, fragments of data encoded in biological rhythms that the Psycorps had learned to interpret. Rhett's hands followed along the matrix, amplifying some signals, dampening others, creating channels for interaction. Solara translated the patterns into cognitive maps, reading the responses of the newcomer and sending subtle cues to guide him. Kalen's adjustments in the energy field ensured stability, preventing the feedback loops that could easily spiral out of control. Mara watched closely, noting the precision with which the newcomer interacted with the weave. He moved deliberately, careful to align his own rhythm with the currents of the room. She could feel the edges of his awareness brushing against hers, a careful probing that invited connection without overwhelming her senses. It was an intricate dance of attention, cognition, and energy, and she recognized in him the rare ability to touch the lattice without fracturing it. As the interaction deepened, the newcomer began to explore further. His pulses became more complex, weaving threads through the network that had never been accessed before. Mara could feel the subtle shifts in resonance as Rhett and Kalen adjusted the energy fields, Solara translating the emergent patterns into readable sequences of intention and action. The room vibrated with the interplay, a living system that was simultaneously human and something more. Mara's awareness stretched, threading through the lattice, observing the delicate balance as the newcomer extended the limits of what the group could manage. Minutes stretched into a rhythm that was felt rather than measured. Mara noted how each Psycorp's member contributed to the stability of the interaction. Rhett's control of the magnetic alignment prevented local disruptions. Kaylin's energy matrix adjustments kept the room's currents from fragmenting, and Solara's cognitive mapping allowed the group to anticipate the newcomers' next moves. Mara herself acted as the sentinel, sensing fluctuations and nudging the threads of energy to maintain cohesion. Together, they formed a single, adaptable consciousness that could respond to the newcomer's presence. The newcomer's abilities became more pronounced. He sent pulses of information that Mara could interpret as questions, testing the boundaries of the network, probing for weak points and areas of potential growth. Rhett counterbalanced these tests with controlled shifts in the magnetic field. Kaylin realigned the energy lattice, and Solara adapted her cognitive mapping to provide clarity. Mara's senses were stretched to their limits, but she remained focused, aware that even a small lapse could cascade into instability. By the time the interaction reached its full complexity, the room had transformed. It was no longer merely a physical space, it had become a multidimensional interface, a living network where thought, energy, and biological rhythm intertwined seamlessly. The newcomer moved through it as naturally as breathing, and the Psycorp's members adjusted in kind, maintaining harmony while exploring the boundaries of what was possible. Mara could feel the pulse of the grid through him, a resonance that hinted at patterns beyond ordinary perception, and she understood that they had encountered something truly extraordinary. Mara sensed the subtle shift before the newcomers entered. Elias stepped across the threshold with careful precision, his own awareness attuned to the unseen lattice of energy that the group had cultivated. Jonas followed closely, quiet but deliberate, carrying with him a rare intuition for patterns that Mara could feel brushing against her own perception. Rhett, Solara, and Kaylin were already positioned, their focus attuned to the room's invisible currents, ready to accommodate the newcomers without disruption. Mara herself moved slightly forward, her senses extending outward to guide and stabilize the intricate weave. Elias' presence introduced a new rhythm, a pulse that interlaced with the existing currents in ways that both challenged and enhanced the group's harmony. Jonas' intuition provided subtle cues to anticipate the interactions, allowing the network to adjust preemptively. Mara felt the room's energy expand, every member of the Psycorps contributing to a living resonance that was more than the sum of its parts. The newcomer's earlier alignment was now tested against this expanded ensemble, each pulse and fluctuation carrying new layers of complexity. Rhett's hands moved deftly across the energy matrix, amplifying stabilizing forces while dampening potential disruptions. Solara's eyes traced the emerging cognitive patterns, translating the overlapping intentions into a form that all members could integrate. Kaylin subtly shifted the lattice, ensuring that the combined energies remained cohesive and responsive. Mara felt her senses extend into Elias and Jonas, linking with their awareness to form a single, fluid network capable of managing far more intricate patterns than before. The newcomer, attuned to the collective Psycorp's presence, began to probe the limits of their combined network. Each pulse he sent carried information, testing the boundaries of synchronization, while Elias' keen perception allowed the group to respond in real time. Jonas' intuition predicted shifts that had not yet manifested, providing subtle guidance that prevented minor fluctuations from escalating. Mara monitored the overall resonance, sensing the moment-to-moment adjustments that kept the room stable. A sequence of pulses traveled across the group, weaving a pattern of interaction that Mara could almost hear as a faint rhythm in the back of her mind. The newcomer sent the pulses deliberately, a form of communication that transcended ordinary words. Rhett, Elias, and Kaylin adjusted the energy matrix in response, while Solara interpreted the cognitive implications, threading the signals into the group's shared understanding. Mara allowed herself to merge fully with the network, feeling the currents as though they were extensions of her own body. Time seemed to fold within the room as the group's resonance grew more complex. The pulses became patterns, the patterns became information, and the information fed back into the network in continuous loops. Elias' unique ability to detect hidden harmonics allowed the group to anticipate emergent fluctuations, while Jonas provided an intuitive counterbalance, ensuring that no single pulse could destabilize the entire system. Mara observed the interaction as both participant and sentinel, noting how the newcomer's abilities expanded under the influence of the collective Psycorp's network. The air itself seemed to hum with energy, vibrating faintly in response to the interwoven currents. Mara could feel the presence of every Psycorp's member as threads within a single, living lattice. Rhett's magnetic attunement aligned the local fields, Kaylin's control of the energy matrix preserved stability, and Solara's cognitive mapping maintained clarity. Elias and Jonas acted as amplifiers and translators, extending the network's reach and depth. The newcomer, once solitary and exploratory, now moved within a network of unparalleled complexity, each pulse resonating across the group in synchronous motion. Dialogue remained minimal but effective, each word a signpost rather than a full instruction. Rhett's calm tone guided the newcomer gently. "Align with the base pulse, stabilize your edge," Solara added softly. "Focus on intention, let the patterns unfold." Mara interjected briefly, sensing a minor fluctuation. "Watch the resonance from the south quadrant, it is drifting." Elias and Jonas moved in near silence, their subtle cues enhancing the network's precision without breaking the flow. As the interaction continued, the room shifted from a simple chamber to a multidimensional interface, where consciousness, energy, and intention intertwined seamlessly. Mara noted the nuanced ways in which each Psycorp's member contributed to the network's stability, understanding that the addition of Elias and Jonas had expanded the possibilities beyond what they had previously achieved. The newcomer's exploration accelerated, his pulses more complex, probing not just the structure of the network but the interactions between individual consciousness and collective resonance. The interplay became almost musical, a symphony of thought and energy. Mara sensed patterns emerging that could not have been produced by any single individual. Rhett harmonized the magnetic fields, Kaylin guided the energy pathways, Solara interpreted the cognitive flows, and Elias and Jonas amplified and translated the subtleties of intention. The newcomer's pulses were now integrated into this symphony, each beat contributing to a growing, living structure that Mara could feel coalescing across the room. Minutes passed, though Mara could not measure them in conventional time. Each pulse carried new information, and the network adapted continuously. Small adjustments were made instinctively, a finger's shift here, a mental focus there, an almost imperceptible alignment of awareness. The room had become a nexus where thought, energy, and biological rhythm intersected, and Mara could feel the tension and potential of every connection. The newcomer began to extend the network further, reaching into subtle layers of resonance that Mara had not yet explored. Elias responded immediately, sensing the underlying harmonics and adjusting the flow. Jonas predicted emergent patterns before they fully manifested, allowing the group to maintain coherence even as complexity increased. Mara, Rhett, Solara, and Kaylin worked in unison with the newcomers, creating a single, adaptive consciousness capable of managing the intricate lattice of pulses and patterns. By the time the interaction reached its full potential, the room itself seemed alive with subtle vibrations. Mara felt the current of every Psycorp's member and the newcomer flowing through her, a continuous thread of awareness that encompassed thought, intention, and energy. The network had expanded beyond any simple definition, a living system of cognition and resonance where the group's collective power amplified and stabilized the newcomer's abilities. As the resonance deepened, Mara felt subtle shifts in perception. The newcomer, once hesitant and probing, now moved confidently within the Psycorp's network, each pulse and thought interweaving seamlessly with the group. Elias' attention to hidden harmonics revealed subtle oscillations in the room, which Jonas anticipated instinctively, allowing Mara to stabilize the edges of the lattice before the smallest fluctuation could cascade. Each member's consciousness became a node in a living matrix, yet every pulse retained individuality, a signature of intention that Mara could track with a clarity that bordered on instinct. Rhett leaned back slightly, his magnetic awareness extending into the farthest corners of the chamber, aligning the currents that the others might not yet perceive. Solara's eyes traced the intangible threads, mapping the flow of cognition into visual patterns that the group could act upon without speaking. Kaylin's energy pathways ensured that the network remained fluid, bridging the gaps between thought and resonance. Mara felt her own mind expand in tandem, integrating the newcomer's energy while maintaining the cohesion of the ensemble. The newcomers shifted, sending out a pulse that carried both curiosity and challenge. Mara felt it ripple through the group, testing the boundaries of control and synchronization. Elias detected subtle feedback loops forming, and with a slight gesture, he directed them into harmony, smoothing the oscillations without breaking the continuity. Jonas' intuition sensed emergent nodes of instability, prompting Mara to adjust her own mental focus to preempt any disruption. The room became a dynamic field of energy, each movement, thought, and intention interlocking into a self-correcting pattern that maintained integrity even under strain. Mara's awareness extended to the minutest detail. She sensed the temperature fluctuations in the room caused by the energetic pulses, the subtle shifts in oxygen flow as breathing synchronized unconsciously, and the micro-expressions of the newcomer as he adapted to the network. Rhett's touch, almost imperceptible, guided electromagnetic currents, while Kalen's subtle manipulations maintained the network's elasticity. Solara's interpretation of cognitive flows added a layer of insight, allowing the group to predict potential deviations before they manifested. Elias and Jonas provided both amplification and translation, creating a bridge that carried the newcomer's raw energy into the mature matrix of the Psycorps. Time itself seemed to bend within the room. Minutes, seconds, and even hours lost meaning as Mara followed the continuous loop of intention and feedback. Each pulse was a sentence, each oscillation a paragraph and a narrative of energy and awareness that unfolded in real time. The newcomer's abilities, once isolated and nascent, were now intertwined with the collective consciousness, allowing Mara and the others to witness the emergence of patterns that no single mind could produce alone. The newcomer paused, a subtle hesitation that Mara felt immediately. A question of limits, a probe of boundaries. She responded with a shift in her own energy, a gentle redirection that provided both structure and freedom. Elias leaned forward slightly, his perception of harmonic overtones clarifying the network's edges. Jonas mirrored the motion, guiding the emergent flows into a predictable trajectory that the group could maintain. Rhett, Solara, and Kalen adjusted in tandem, each action measured, fluid, and precise. A new rhythm emerged, one that neither the newcomer nor the original Psycorps had encountered before. It was a complex resonance, a composite of intention, awareness, and energy. Mara allowed herself to merge fully, following the oscillations as they threaded through the room. She sensed the energy of each member as distinct yet complementary, weaving a tapestry that was dynamic, adaptive, and infinitely intricate. Each pulse carried information, emotion, and potential, forming a living interface that responded to thought, intuition, and subtle gesture alike. The newcomer's confidence grew. He began experimenting with pulses that challenged the network's stability, sending bursts of energy that were unpredictable in their trajectory. Mara felt the oscillations ripple outward, but Elias detected underlying harmonics that could be leveraged to stabilize the flow. Jonas anticipated the feedback and nudged the resonance into alignment before instability could take hold. Rhett's magnetic awareness, Solara's cognitive mapping, and Kalen's energy guidance combined seamlessly, creating a living buffer that allowed the newcomer to explore without fracturing the system. The room itself seemed to pulse with life. Mara felt the faint hum of energy vibrating in the walls, the subtle scent of ozone in the air, and the low, rhythmic beat of collective consciousness echoing in the background. Each Psycorps member contributed to this field, amplifying, translating, and integrating the newcomer's energy into a cohesive whole. For Mara, it was both exhilarating and humbling to witness the emergence of patterns that were entirely new, yet deeply resonant with the group's established framework. Elias sent a subtle signal, a harmonic cue that threaded through the network. Jonas responded, weaving intuition into the structured pulse. Mara adjusted her own focus, allowing the flow to expand into higher dimensional patterns without losing stability. Rhett guided the magnetic fields with precision, while Solara interpreted the unfolding cognitive signals, translating them into actionable adjustments. Kalen's manipulation of the energy pathways maintained fluidity, creating channels for the emergent forces to flow seamlessly. The newcomer's exploration reached a critical point. His pulses formed a sequence that suggested self-awareness, a tentative grasp of the network's collective intelligence. Mara sensed the subtle shift, feeling both the potential and the risk. Elias and Jonas coordinated instinctively, aligning the harmonics and reinforcing the stability of the lattice. Rhett, Solara, and Kalen responded in kind, each contributing to the evolving structure of awareness that now enveloped the room. For Mara, the sensation was extraordinary. She felt as if the entire room had become an extension of her own mind, a dynamic, living system of energy, thought, and intention. The newcomers' contributions were no longer foreign. They were integral to the fabric of the network, each pulse resonating with the combined consciousness of the Psycorps. Every fluctuation, every oscillation, and every emergent pattern was observed, adjusted, and integrated in real time, creating a continuously evolving tapestry of awareness. As the session progressed, the boundaries between individual and collective consciousness began to blur. Mara felt the subtle influence of each member extending into the others, a continuous feedback loop that balanced autonomy with integration. The newcomer's understanding grew in tandem with the network. Elias' detection of harmonic subtleties, Jonas' intuitive foresight, Rhett's magnetic alignment, Solara's cognitive interpretation, and Kalen's energy pathways merged seamlessly with Mara's own perception, forming a fully integrated system of awareness. The network's resonance reached new heights. Pulses became language, oscillations became thought, and the entire room transformed into a living interface of energy and cognition. Mara felt the newcomer's mind probing the boundaries of the network, testing limits, and discovering emergent possibilities. Each Psycorps member responded with precision, adjusting, stabilizing, and amplifying in real time. The room's energy field expanded, contracting and flexing like a living organism, responsive to the collective will of its participants. Finally, a moment of quiet clarity settled over the room. Mara sensed the culmination of the session, a complex lattice of awareness that had never existed before. The newcomer had fully integrated, not by domination or imitation, but by resonance, allowing his unique abilities to amplify and extend the collective power of the Psycorps. Elias and Jonas exchanged subtle cues, Rhett and Solara adjusted the fields, Kalen maintained fluidity, and Mara herself felt the room hum with the pulse of a shared, living consciousness. The newcomer's pulse slowed, a signal of understanding and alignment. Mara relaxed slightly, knowing that the experiment had succeeded beyond expectation. Elias and Jonas allowed the network to settle, their harmonics fading into a gentle resonance. Rhett, Solara, and Kalen mirrored the motion, and Mara took a deep, synchronized breath with the entire group. The room was no longer just a chamber. It was a nexus of awareness, an evolving system that could adapt, learn, and expand with every new member. Mara turned to the newcomer, sensing both relief and exhilaration in his subtle pulses. "You've found your place," she said, her voice carrying calm authority. Elias and Jonas nodded subtly, confirming the integration. Rhett offered a quiet, approving hum. Solara's eyes glimmered with insight, and Kalen's fingers traced invisible patterns in the air. The newcomer allowed himself a brief moment of stillness, feeling the network wrap around him like a second skin, a living matrix of thought, energy, and intention. And Mara knew, as she had always known, that this was only the beginning.